Chiwen and I'm from Group 4, which is the name is jet2holiday, and today I will going to explain about model view controller to use on our final project, which is the real estate property management. So firstly, I will explain about the common concept of MVC. The MVC program will be separated into three most important parts, which is view, controller, and model. So the code flow is like the user will key in their input, and then the view class will get the input to display all the input or display the prompt. Then the input will be passed to controller. Then the controller will control all the flow of the system, and then it will pass the input from view to model, and then or pass the data from model to view. So lastly, the model class, it will be store the data, which is the user input store, and then it will do business logic or math functions. Introduce our property management app. So our app is complete real estate management system that can contact three user roles, which is the first one agent who manage property, and then the second one owner who own property, and then the third one tenant who rent property. So the key feature include property management, room and furniture management, rental request processing, report generation, and comprehensive exception handling. So currently we have work console application. However, as you can see from our code, the real estate system.java file has grown to over 500 lines and handle all responsibility, which is data storage, menu display, and then user input, business logic, and exception and reports. So this is why we need MVC, because we need to separate this concern and make our code more maintainable. And then now I will explain for the three user role in detail. So the three user role, first, agent have the most comprehensive access. They can perform full card operations on property, manage room and furniture, approve or reject rental request, assign owner and agent property, generate reports, view all property in system. Next, property owner have limit and focus access. They can only view their own property, check rental requests for their property, view current tenant information, and update their personal contact details. But they cannot see other owner properties. So tenant have the simplest access. They can view available property, search property by keywords, submit rental requests, track their rental requests, request status, view their current rentals, and then update personal contact informations. So these three roles have very different permissions and workflow. This makes our apps a perfect candidate for MVC, as each role can have its own controller and view.
I'm Ganume, and next I will explain how the MVC architecture is applied in our property management system. First, we have the model layer. So the model layer represents the data and business object used in the system. It is responsible for storing and managing application data. The model classes in our project include user, apartment, property, house, owner, agent, tenant, room, furniture, and rental requests. So these classes store the information required by the system. For example, the property class store property-related information, while the rental request class store rental application details. Okay, next is the view layer. The view layer is responsible for displaying information to users. The view classes in our project are main menu view, owner view, tenant view, and agent view. These classes handle the screen and menus that users interact with throughout the system. And finally, we have the controller layer. The controller receives user action from the view, processes them, and interacts with the appropriate model classes. The controller classes in our project include main controller, owner controller, tenant controller, and agent controller. So this controller coordinates the communication between the user interface and the system data. Apart from that, besides the main MVC components, our project also includes several supporting packages such as interface and exceptions. Although they are not part of the core MVC structure, but they help improve code organization, usability, and error handling. Therefore, our folder structure is not only limited to just model, view, and controller, but also contains additional components that support the overall system development.
Hello, I am Engineer, and now I will present about the menu flow. When the program starts, main.java will create the main controller, which take control. The main controller will tell the main menu view to display the option which are agent, owner, or tenant. The main controller will wait for the user input. Once the user make a choice, the controller will decide which role to activate. For example, if user selects agent, the main controller will delegate the control to the agent controller. When the agent controller receives control, it first asks the agent view to prompt for an agent ID. The view collects the ID and sends it back to the controller. The controller then asks the model to verify if that agent exists in the data. If the agent exists, we proceed to the agent menu. If not, the controller tells the view to show an error and asks again. This verification stage, the controller is the bridge between view and model. Once the agent is verified, the agent controller will enter a loop. This is important. Inside this loop, controller tells agent view to display the agent menu. Agent view will wait for user choice, and then controller will receive the choice and decide what to do. This loop will continue until the user chooses to log out. For example, user sees agent menu, choose view properties, see properties, press enter, and then returns to agent menu again. Now let's move to function execution. Let me trace what happens when an agent selects add property. First, the controller receives choice 1. It calls the add property method inside agent controller. Inside this method, controller asks agent view to get property details such as ID, address, and price. Then controller asks model to check for duplicate IDs. Create a new property object, tells model to store it, and then tells agent view to show success message. After the function complete, the controller returns to the top of the loop, redisplay the menu, and waits for the next choice. When the user selects logout from any row menu, the controller breaks out of its loop and returns control to the main controller. The main controller then redisplays the main menu, allowing the user to log in as a different role or exit the program.
I'm Zhang Yueli. Now I will present about several example flows showing how MVC will work in our app. First example, tenant searches for a property. The flow starts from the tenant view to the tenant controller to the property controller to the property which is module and back to the property controller and back to the tenant controller and last back to the tenant view. Tenant view displays the agent menu, receives the user input which is the search property, and tenant controller receives the tenant request for the request to the property controller, and the property controller requests property data from the property module. Property module searches the database for property that match the specific criteria like property name and return the matching property to the property controller, receives the search result and send the result to tenant controller, and send also the tenant controller send to the tenant view. Tenant view display the matching property to the tenant. So let's start to the example 2. Agent adds a new property. The flow is started for the agent view to the agent controller to the property controller to the property which is module that store data and back to the property controller, back to the agent controller and last back to the agent view. Agent view display the agent menu, receives the user input choice which is the add property and the property detail from the agent. So the agent controller receive the property detail from the agent view and forward the request to the property controller. Property controller receives the property detail from agent controller and send the request to the property module. Property module create a new property, store the property detail in the database, return the success or failure status to the property controller. Property controller receive the status and send the result to the agent controller. Agent controller also receive and send to the agent view. Agent view display the message to the agent based on the status. So send the success message if status is true, while send the failure message if status is false. For the example 3, admin manage users such as delete user. The flow starts from the admin view to the admin controller to the user controller to user which is module and back to the user controller, back to the admin controller, last back to the admin view. Admin view display the admin menu, receive the input choice which is delete user and the user details such as user ID. So admin controller receive the user detail from admin view and forward the request to the user controller. User controller receive and send the user detail to the user module. User module delete user record from database, return the success or failure status to the user controller. User controller receive and send to the admin controller. Same as user controller, admin controller receive and send the status to the admin view. Admin view display the message to the admin based on the status, same as the example 2. In conclusion, the flow is start from view to controller to model and back to the controller and view. That's all. Thank you.